Hey, Mus. You talked a little bit about finishing the season on a winning note, but just some specifics from that game and being in a neutral side away from home. I thought the rim protection maybe was the best it was all year. The ball movement was obviously maybe better than it had been in a while or at times. Were there any specific things you can take away from one game? I mean, it's one matchup against a specific personnel set, but are there specifics you can take away from that game to build on as a model maybe moving forward?
I think so, Kevin. I think number one, like I thought we played the right way on both ends of the floor. I thought that like the rim protection might not have just been on blocking shots, but I thought we kept the lane compact a little bit more than we had earlier in conference play. And Isaiah helps a lot with that because he's such a great charge taker. And, the thing with Isaiah, Joe, is he understands defensive spacing. A lot of guys understand and talk a lot about offensive spacing, but Isaiah's IQ being in help defense and look, Vanderbilt, presented some problems. I mean, they were playing really good basketball towards the last end of the conference play. They were confident. They were playing in their own city. It was a game that we were really concerned with, but I thought from a preparation standpoint, our guys were the best that they were all year. And, I think the one thing that they did a great job of is understanding that was a third season. And they kind of had a little bit more energy and enthusiasm than maybe even some other teams that I've had that had advanced in conference tournaments and advanced in the NCAA. I thought that our group was as focused, guys getting on the bus saying, "We got this thing, coach," or, during the huddle, "Hey, chill, coach, we know what we got to do." There was a confidence air about our group that game, and certainly in the locker room after the game, there was a confident, air about them as well, which is why we were so excited to advance and to continue to play.
Right, and quickly now, talking about everything being on hold, the transfer portal is spinning as fast as it's ever spinning, revolving door players coming in. We know, we've kind of seen your playbook for that. We saw last year you brought in 5 transfers. You've already reached out to, in the double digits already. Are you looking for best available players when you are going through the portal? Is it about needs, kind of a combination of things? What's the philosophy there, and what do you hope to accomplish in this cycle with the transfer portal?
Yeah, I mean, I think, first of all, so much is put on social media and stuff about, certain programs contacted. Well, I mean, it's our job, to do due diligence on every available player, whether it's a high school player, whether it's a transfer. And right now, basically the whole world's come to a stop except the basketball transfer portal. And that's moving at a quicker rate than anything in the world almost. I mean, it's guys are putting their names in and but there's I would say, just like when you do due diligence on a high school player, when you start diving into the player and then you might make an initial phone call, but when you watch film, you might say, not quite what we need or not the size that the SEC needs, and then we do a whole analytical thing on transfers, and we've kind of come up with a formula on guys that transfer up, meaning low majors or mid majors, and try to have a formula to spit out on those stats what those would mean at our level. And it's our job. I mean, we're still working. We're not working in a normal office environment, but we're still working around the clock. I mean, last night I didn't put my phone down until 11:30. It was one of the first nights in a while that I did not watch a TV show with my wife because of a number of people that were in the transfer portal, and we're calling our own recruits. We're calling our own players, so we're actually on the phone, or I have been on the phone more in the last week than maybe I have in 5 years of being in college basketball.
You mentioned earlier, you were asked about the likelihood of both Mason Jones and Isaiah Mason and Isaiah back with these other pieces that you have coming in?
Yeah, I mean, I think, the thing with Mason and Isaiah, I just want to support those guys and support their families, and I've been through this process on both sides. I feel like I know how it works, and so I just think right now, because nobody knows what's going on with combines, and I know how hard it is to get invited to the combine, and I can go off our Nevada group, and we actually had, Cam Oliver was invited to the combine after his sophomore year. He came out early. He did not get drafted, and he was one of 60 players in the combine. Caleb and Cody Martin both went to the combine. The year before, after their senior year, only one of them was invited. So there's so much thought process that has to go into it. We just want to be supportive and to speculate on where our team is. We certainly feel, like Mason and Isaiah are two of the premier players in college basketball. So, whether it was anybody in our conference or any other conference, two players like that. I mean, we all know, the player that Isaiah is, and obviously because of missing 5 games, from a statistical standpoint, I mean, the thing that I can't give Isaiah enough credit for is he wanted to come back as early as he possibly could. He wanted to do what was right for the team. He wanted to help the team win. He put himself over the team. The way that he rehabbed, coming in and trying to get ready, he was selfless in trying to do what was right to help the Razorbacks, and I can't state that enough. And then obviously the year that Mason had, we relied on him in so many different areas, and so we're just here to support those guys. I think if they decided to come back, I think they'd both be two of the best players in the country, and I think that their role would be incredible on our team. And if it's a different decision, then we're here to do whatever we can to help them.
All right. One last question I have for you. You were obviously with Johnny Jones at LSU the first time you sat on a bench and went through the SEC slate. Then off to Nevada, had great success there. Coming back to Arkansas and having it from a different perspective as running your own program, what's different about the SEC that you remembered? Is it a better league? Are there anything that you learned this year that maybe caught you by surprise based on your recollection from when you were at LSU?
You know what? I think the crowds are better. I don't have any numbers in front of me, but and a lot of it's like, when you scout it, you don't play everybody on the road. But when I was at LSU, we played at Auburn. But we watched Auburn so much this year, although we didn't go there. I mean, their crowds are amazing, and I thought Alabama had a great crowd, this year when we were there, and obviously the numbers tell that, that Missouri, that was their biggest attended game, and so I think that, and then, the quality of head coaches in our league. There's no league, and I don't think there's any league that even comes close to the coaches on a nightly basis that you have to face. I mean, you're talking about every week going against 2 really good head coaches, and I think the talent, the size, all that stuff is no different at all than when I was at LSU. I think of our LSU team with, George Mickey and Jarrell Martin and Tim Quarterman and Hornsby. That was a talented, long team, and then the Arkansas team, obviously, with Bobby, because we played against them that last game. We're talking about great size with those 2 teams alone. So, I don't think size or length or any of that surprised us, but I do think the coaching and I do think that some of the attendance in our league has certainly changed from what I remember it.
Thanks.
Thanks, Jeff. Bob?
Eric, I was wanting to ask about your 3 red shirts. Maybe you could comment on each of those development, what kind of red shirts do you think they had, and what you're expecting from them moving forward.
I mean, JD is he's a guy that got in extra work on his own in the weight room. He got in extra work on the floor. He's a quiet guy that's really competitive and really tough-minded. He doesn't say a lot, but he competes. And he's got great toughness. He can play 2 guard spots for us. He's a guy that can create his own shot. He's a guy that I think is going to be able to create offense through defensively getting steals. I think the big thing with JD is just getting experience. The one thing that we know from being in Nevada and having guys sit out of years, those first 3 to 4 games become important for those guys from a confidence standpoint because they've been out for a full season. Connor, he changes the dynamics of what we look like when we get off the bus and in warm-ups. We look different with him because of his size. He can really shoot the basketball. We want him to continue to work on post moves because I think if he gets that thing with his back to the basket, he's got such great touch. Want to continue to work with Connor on his strength and his lower body base to get stronger. We want to continue to work on Connor's upper body strength. But I think the biggest growth that we saw from Connor was he went from not saying much at all on the floor to being one of our better talkers. And communication on the floor is really important for us in our system and what we believe in. And Connor went from kind of a shy, not saying much to being one of our stronger voices. But obviously, perimeter shooting, he's going to give us that, and he's just so unique being that size and a guy that can shoot and pass. And then, like I said, we're going to have to figure some different schematic things out for him because he is different in pick and roll coverages and things like that. And then Bebe's a guy that just, he's a worker, 100% energy, at all times. I mean, that's just kind of who he is. He's just a utility guy who really, really works and works and works.
Did you feel good overall about those guys' redshirt seasons? Like they really got a lot done?
I do. One of the things, that we don't really call it a sit-out year. We call it a player development year, and a lot of that's up to the individual player. I mean, we're not going to be able to scrimmage a lot in season, when you have a limited roster. I mean, that's just not going to be able to happen. But we did. Coach Mosier implemented 3-on-3 after every practice, and that's something that the NBA does. And so I think that competition, and then Coach Mosier actually ranked every single day 1 through 6 how each guy performed. And that was good to be able to give feedback to those guys on their matchups and things like that in 3-on-3. So I think they did really well, Bob, but it's not over. I mean, they still have, quite a few months before they'll play a game in November. So it's going to be important that they continue that. But now, obviously, they're a focal point in everything that we do moving forward.
Yeah. I have 2 more questions, which is still less than 13, I think. I guess maybe the year the first Razorbacks in Moncrief to lead Arkansas scoring, rebounding, assist, steals. And I'm certainly not saying concrete, because concrete's the gold standard. But what do you think about Mason being the first guy to do that in over 40 years?
I mean, I think really the best thing was, and we had to meet with Mason, was, like, I know that Mason's a 2-3 guard. And, an off guard or a small forward. We had to go to Mason and ask him, hey, Mason, based on our roster, will you trust us if we play you at the power forward spot? And if you play the power forward spot, you're going to get a lot of mismatches. And because he, for the betterment of the team, played that power forward spot, he had the ball in his hands a ton. And so he was a playmaker or a point forward for us. Moving forward, I mean, I think that Mason Jones could play stretches of a game as a point guard and give us great size. Now not a lot, because we know he's a scorer, but for a short segment, he has that in him to be a playmaker. Whether that's at the 4 spot or wherever, but he rebounded the ball at a career high level. His assist, I mean, if you look all the way across the board, he had a career year, and he's going to keep getting better. I don't think that stops. I mean, if he has the same work ethic that he did last summer, and he comes back, he's going to have an even better year. His percentages will go up, and his numbers will go up, because he's that type of guy that really, really works.
And then the last one, Jimmy, is he staying here? This is kind of a two-parter, I guess. Is he staying here, wants to stay here, or is it, he shouldn't go home? And just what do you think of his season, trusting you with his last year of college eligibility, and what do you see as the future for Jimmy? I'm sure he's going to play somewhere, whether it's here or overseas or wherever.
Yeah, so Jimmy is going to head home, here in the next few days. But he had a great year. He guarded the opposing team's best player every single night. I mean, we got him guarding the center against Indiana, and he guarded the Georgia Tech center for stretches, and I think about the defensive assignment that he was given against TCU, against Bain, and what he did. He had an incredible year. We knew he came out of a great situation at SMU where he played a lot and had good stats and wanted to come back here, and certainly feel like, Jimmy did get an invite. Portsmouth Invitational had reached out. It is, the Portsmouth Invitational is now, not happening, but he was invited to that, which is a great honor. It's one of the stepping stones to play in the NBA. We also got a letter for him. He was being under consideration. They still had not finalized their roster, but he was under consideration for the Reese's game at the Final Four, the All-Star game. I got an email regarding Jimmy's interest in that. So 2 big-time postseason, events. One he was already part of, and the other he was still being under consideration. So it's great to know that people recognized outside of the SEC or Arkansas what type of season he had. And, people are really smart, like, the people that run Portsmouth and NBA scouts. Like, everybody knows that Jimmy Witt really defended and guarded the best player. Like, that's, basketball is half offense and half defense. And he was a premier defender for us. And like I said, that's half of a game of basketball. And I think I think NBA people recognize that, or at least the people that watch tape or watch games.
I guess whenever the NBA gets back on course, certainly somebody's going to give Jimmy a shot, don't you think?
Yeah, I certainly think that. Again, no one knows what's going to happen with Summer League or anything like that, but I certainly have already been on the phone with people about Jimmy, and our staff will continue to promote Jimmy as much as we can. Certainly, a player like Jimmy is his path's probably summer league, vet camp. That would be his way onto a roster, and we'll have all those discussions with Jimmy and kind of lay that path of what he needs to do to reach his goal.
Thanks, Eric. I'm good, I think.
Thanks, Bob. Nikki?
Hey, Coach. They've canceled EYBL sessions and stuff like that. We don't know when you're going to be able to go back out on the road to recruit. How much of an impact does that have on recruiting? I know you've already offered a bunch of guys, but you won't get to see how they progress, stuff like that. So, how do you think that'll impact your recruiting for 2021 and
Yeah, I think it impacts. The one good thing, at least, Nikki, is everybody's on the same level playing field. But I do think it certainly affects, your evaluation. Again, who knows how the rest of the summer plays out, but certainly you hope that everything's, there's normals, it gets back to normal at some point, and that, if the summer's, wiped out or, there's no summer at all, then September evals become important when guys are at their high school. And, I guess, from a recruiting and evaluation standpoint, we just have to see, how these next couple months play out. But, I think, you're going to have to work a little bit different pace, maybe in September and see, multiple guys and maybe your format or your plan gets adjusted.
Scotty? Yeah, hey Coach. I was curious, what maybe you learned about yourself as a coach in your first year here.
Wow, that's a great question. I'm speechless for the first time since I've been here. I think as coaches, you're always learning. I'm speechless. I got to get back to you on that. That's my project for the day.
There you go. I've got another one. I was just kind of curious to the inspiration behind the video, the press conference. Was it just kind of having a session with someone kind of made it happen?
Yeah, so we, like every morning we talk, and the Pat Eckerman was the brains behind the practice. So I got to give Pat credit, and then that led to a few other ideas that we've staged or whatever. I threw the part of the press conference stuff by Danielle, and we all, there's like 4 of us every day that just kind of throw wild ideas off of each other, and we're just trying to lighten the mood a little bit. We know the seriousness of what's going on in the world, but having said that, we're all searching for things to entertain us, and that was kind of the, we understand that right now people are on social media, like I said, looking for things, and without any live sporting events, we just want to stay connected to our fan base as best we can. That's the biggest thing is staying connected to our fans and staying connected to recruits.
I know you talked a little bit about your shirt guy or development years, but what really excites you about JD Note?
Yeah, I think that, JD, we just kind of saw his confidence. I think when he first got here, he might not have been used to the speed and the size, obviously coming from Jacksonville, that's going to be different. And then I think he adjusted. And then the next thing was when he was on the scout team, just building his confidence up through scoring on people and those type of things. And I think he's going to be a more consistent three-point shooter because he just put so much time into it on his own.
Appreciate it. All right, any more questions for Coach Mudd?
Yes, I have one, Dudley.
Hey, Dudley.
Obviously, we don't know when you'll be able to get back with your team and roster, but what does the NCAA allow y'all to do during the summer these days and the fall in terms of preparation?
Well, we're usually under that 4-hour time frame, Dudley. We're 4 hours a week. However you want to use those. I mean, some people go 45 minutes at a time. Some go 30, and then it's the same thing in the weight room where you're allowed that same amount of time. So, different people, different programs handle it different ways. Some people use only skill development groups where maybe it's guards and then they do their time and then they leave and then bigs come in. For us, it'll be full. It'll be a full team. We'll use all of our hours as a team. It won't be individual stuff. So I've done it that way the last 5 years, and that's the way we'll continue to do it because a lot of it too is we're going to have so many new people that it's going to be important from a terminology standpoint and so forth that we get right into team stuff.
And to that end, obviously I guess it's April 15th to May 20th is the late signing period so far. Have you heard any conversation about whether that'll stay the same or will they move it, or what have you heard on that?
I really haven't heard much, Dudley. I mean, I think that all this stuff is, it's almost like what we hear today might change tomorrow, and what we hear tomorrow might change by next Thursday. So, right now it's, I guess the best way to say is, we as coaches are pretty much no different than everyone else, just kind of waiting to see how all this unfolds, whether it's signing period, whether it's, NBA draft date, whether it's, all that stuff is so fluctuating.
Appreciate it, and thanks for doing this.
Thanks, Dudley. Thank you.
All right, last call.
I'm going to jump in with one more. Kyle Deckelbaum. Coach, just what you learned about the fan base this year and about a year on the job when you think back to some of those sellouts that were already sold out in December, just what you learned about the state and the fan base in a year.
Yeah, I had a pretty good feel, before we even, played, just from speaking around the state, and even, out of the state, like speaking in Memphis to a group of Razorback fans. And, the passion's incredible. When you go recruiting throughout the state, you go into, different schools and people are wearing that Razorback, and so I felt that, and even as early as going to baseball games and seeing the tailgating and just things that I have not seen at that level, and then certainly the crowds that we had, it was amazing. Almost all programs, you can't fill a 12,000 seat arena, let alone one that's close to 20. It's unheard of. It motivates us. It motivates our players. It motivates our coaching staff to continue to try to connect with our fans in every way possible, to not take any of that for granted because it's so unique. Probably the greatest thing about this year is we know as a staff and our players know if our team plays really, really hard, if we compete, our fans will come and support us, and come and support us with incredible enthusiasm. So, we could not feel more fortunate to be in that situation. Because, like, look, when you drive up to Bud Walton 2 hours before the game, as a coach, like, you can feel the passion's going to be in that building, and that's whether it's a midweek game or whether it's a weekend game. I've never experienced anything like it for a full season. I mean, everybody can have one or two great crowds, but to do it night after night is, really cool to be a part of it.
Thanks, Coach.
Thank you.
Any more questions? All right, thanks much. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, Kyle.
Thanks, Coach.
See you guys. Appreciate it.